Thank you for your interest in using the Human Capital Report. I've designed this particular website to enable you to debate and rate your people management practices and subsequently create a human capital report which may be of interest to investors. My name is Peter Fargus, and this is going to be about a 30-minute presentation. So just to summarize then, the website has been designed firstly to catalyze a systematic discussion on your people management practices. Secondly, to facilitate the creation or the update of your human capital strategy. And thirdly, to create a report which is aimed at attracting the interest of investors or funders. Now the agenda, which is here, is to consolidate the two key objectives I've already mentioned, to have a look at the options and outcomes of using the website. I'm going to say a little bit about the importance of human capital, and if this is already known to you, then you can fast forward at that stage. Then about the human capital report itself, the free bit and the fee bit, as I call them. Downloading the report content, and then frequently asked questions, and last of all, how to contact me. Okay, so the two key objectives. I think the first one has got to be enabling you to review and update your people management practices. And this is because if you have effective people management practices that are coordinated into a human capital strategy, this almost certainly will have some positive results on your business results. Secondly, the report itself is aimed to attract the interest of investors. The investors are interested in what is called intangible assets, and these summarized here: human capital, relationship capital, organizational capital, and intellectual property. I have actually omitted intellectual property from this particular approach because it is already well catered for by solicitors and accountants. So let's just have a look at the two options you have. I think the first one I would call debate and rate, and it is a systematic agenda in effect where you can record your own ratings and your conclusions and pay no fee, no charge for this at all, unless of course you decide to use a facilitator, in which case the facilitator would charge their own fee. The creation of the report is fee-based, £500 at the moment, which is May 2023, and the report focuses on your strengths as you define them, your opportunities for improvement, what I call human capital financial ratios or workforce financial ratios. There are some benchmarks which you can compare your results to, and there's also the option of downloading a format for creating or updating your human capital strategy. In terms of outcomes, this is one which is a radar chart, and around the radar chart you can see the various factors or criteria that are used to debate your practices and to create the report. As you can see, there are two circles here. The orange one is the benchmark data, and the blue one is an example organization I've created myself. Second outcome would be a more detailed analysis of your judgments to do with each factor. So if we just go back a minute to the original slide, you'll see one factor here called workforce know-how. Now, the workforce know-how consists of a series of descriptors. There are only 2 here, but typically there will be up to 9 in each factor. And for each descriptor, you are asked to first of all establish its relevance to your business. And that's a 0 to 5 rating scale. Then you're also asked to rate your level of deployment of these particular descriptors. And once again, it's a rating scale of 0 to 5. The combination of those 2 ratings creates a score. It's a multiplication, a score, and the system itself generates an average score which can be compared with the benchmarks. It also identifies opportunities for improvement and strengths, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. Another example outcome would be workforce investments or ratios. During the approach, you're asked to input your total pay, your revenue, your profitability, and your investment in people, in learning and development. And incidentally, this can be done anonymously. You don't need to divulge potentially commercially confidential information. As I say, it can be done on a confidential basis, anonymous basis. Then the benchmark analysis. Here you've got the three of the 12 factors. This is the score that will be generated by your debate and rate sessions, the comparison score, and then the difference. The comparison score is based on results from a survey of over 200 enterprises, plus surveys of nearly over 100 professional and private investors. The enterprises have told me in general how well they have developed in each factor, and the investors have told me the level of importance they attribute to each factor, and that combination creates the comparison score. So I'm going to say a little bit more about the importance of human capital, and if this is something you already know about, then go fast forward to around about slide 12 where I talk about the report itself. What is human capital? Well, if we look at this Investopedia website here, you'll see that this slide is based on the Investopedia definition of what human capital is. It's an intangible asset not listed on the balance sheet. It's perceived to be invaluable by investors. It includes the qualities like employee knowledge, skills, experience and abilities. It can be improved by investing in education and training and organisation development. And it has a strong link with organisational growth, productivity and profitability. Unfortunately, it can depreciate through not keeping up with technology and innovation. Another way of looking at it is if you have a series of enterprise assets, physical capital, intellectual capital, or financial capital. The intellectual capital consists of a combination of human capital, organisational capital, relationship capital and intellectual property. The issue here, of course, is that human capital has a significant influence on all the others, and this is why this particular approach is called human capital report, although it does include organisational and relationship capital, and as I said earlier, it excludes intellectual property because that is covered very well by accountants and solicitors. I mentioned that investors are interested in this, my own research of 110 investors tends to back this up. Of the 110, 96 responded, and as you can see, most of them said that their perceived value of the organisation would be increased if they had the sort of information that is contained within this suggested report. So if we look here, we've got a 0% increase in value, perceived value, up to a 50%. I didn't go above a 50%, although maybe some of them might well have done given the opportunity. So 32 of the 96 said that they reckoned that they could well consider their perceived value to go up by over 50%, 50% or over. 10 is 40%, 13 30%, 18 20%, 8 10%. Now some of them are saying that they didn't consider this would actually impact on their perceived value of the organisation. And my guesstimate, although I can't specify this is exactly true, my guesstimate is that these are likely to be day traders. And those that are really interested in human capital are likely to be those long-term investors. That's my interpretation anyway. I mentioned that there's some research into the linkage between human capital and organisational performance. There's a couple here. The first one is saying that the organisations that have effective human capital possess greater resilience during challenging times, and haven't we had some recently? The other one here says that effective human capital optimises organisational performance. If you want to know more about these particular references, they are listed on the back of these slides, at the end of these slides. I'm also offering you a couple of headings from magazines. The World Economic Forum suggests that human capital is the key to a successful ESG strategy, and the journal in America, the Accountants Journal in America, a renewed focus on human capital. Both headings which are relatively new in the early 2020s. So onto the report itself. This is the logo which you get when you go onto the landing page of the report, and this is of course the actual URL for the report. And if you scroll down, what you'll find is the various bits of information which I'm just about to go through now. Just a quick explanation of how the report was designed in the first place. It didn't come completely out of the blue. I did a very comprehensive literature review to try to identify the various factors that I've used. I've consulted 10 subject matter experts to get their opinion. There was a draft, a survey, investors and management, statistical analysis, a second draft, a series of case studies, and then up to the actual report itself. And you can find out more about that in the reference list on slide 41. So if we go to the home, what you find is a series of circles and some information about how the debate and rate stage can influence your business. So I'm suggesting here, for example, that your workforce will be impacted because what I expect to happen is that the debate and rate will identify opportunities for improvement in the people management practices that you already have. I think investors will be interested because, as I've shown in previous slides, they would be interested in how the professionalism that you show in managing people within your business. And your board, of course, will find it useful because it's a systematic agenda which the board can follow to make sure you cover all the different aspects of human capital management. So scrolling down, you get a how to carry out the debate and rate. You definitely, I would recommend you definitely prepare for the debate and rate. And you'll see as we go through the slides later on that there is actually a questionnaire you can download and use to help you, first of all, form your own opinions on an individual basis, and also helps you identify any paperwork that may support the ratings that you end up with. Then you go on to the review stage, which I call the debate and rate stage. And after that, you don't have to go on to the report. It is possible, feasible to have a pretty effective, valuable output from your debate without going on to the actual report. But should you wish to do so, then you can click the fee on the fee rate and go on to the actual chargeable report, which I'll cover in a bit more detail as we go through the slides. I mentioned case studies. There are three very important ones. The first one is a manufacturing organisation, and they used the report to because they were aiming to sell the business, and they wanted to be able to show investors their practices, their people management practices in a systematic fashion. The second one is a repertory theatre, and they didn't have investors, they had funders. And they used it because they wanted to demonstrate, or the funders asked them to demonstrate how effective their people management practices were and are. And the craft brewery is a rapidly growing business, and what the managing director there wanted to do was make sure that his approach to managing people could be transferred or transformed into a formal people management strategy, improving as he went along. So those are example case studies. You can find out more about those by clicking on that on the website. There is an example of how to use this particular approach. I won't go into it now because that will duplicate what I'm saying to you at the moment. And I've also mentioned prices. Two options. The debate and rate stage is free, as I mentioned. If you wish to create a report or download a report, then that fee would be £500 in May 2023. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't use a facilitator should you wish to do so, but the website was designed so you wouldn't need to use one as long as you have a reasonably cohesive board of directors. In terms of facilitation, I'm not recommended necessarily that you're using myself or Dee, my wife. You can do if you wish, and certainly we'll help you out if we can, but there's no reason why you shouldn't use your own consultant or facilitator that you trust. The role that my wife has primarily is the data analysis of the benchmark data. So when you click on Start, you have, again, two options. The first one is just go ahead without actually telling me who you are, or telling the system who you are. You can go ahead anonymously, you can do your debate and rate, and that's it. That is a freebie, which I think is very valuable. Should you wish to download your report, and you know you want to download your report, then you are requested to register an account. And the account, and incidentally, if you go ahead without registering, you do have the option of doing so towards the end of your debate and rate, and then you can go on to downloading a report should you decide to do so. But if you do register, then there are a number of things you're asked to input. I won't go through them in detail, other than to say that you can create an anonymous account, The only thing I would ask is that of this information you input, I'd appreciate it if you could ensure that the industry and employee numbers are correct, because that helps my wife develop the benchmark data. But your name, your email, your organization mail can be just made up. You do need to input them, because if you go out of the system, you need them to come back in again. So let's assume that you've decided to go on. What you'll find is you are presented with a page that looks like this. You can download a questionnaire, as I mentioned earlier on, but you can't actually go on to the second deliverable, the report, until you've finished entering your data, which should be here. The questionnaire, incidentally, contains exactly the same questions as the website. So you can use it, as I say, to prepare and to assemble your facts and figures. Once you have entered your data, or once you've finished your debate, let's put it that way, you can just end the process and pay nothing. What I'd like to do is just to show you one example of a factor. If we go to this one here, workforce adaptability. Just bear with me whilst I scroll down. Workforce adaptability. Where can I put myself? Just put myself back over here. There's a definition of each factor, a bit of background to why the factor is incorporated into the system, and then how to actually carry out your rating. Now each descriptor, actually I'll just go on to the next slide because it explains what a descriptor is. Here is the same factor, but there are a couple of example descriptors here. And if you look at the rating scales here, the first thing you are asked to do is to rate the relevance of this particular descriptor to your business. Then you need to rate your level of deployment, and in both cases it's a 0 to 5 rating scale. So here, for example, you would put your level of importance to your business in terms of helping you achieve your objectives, and here you would put your level of deployment. Now this bit here is quite an important one, particularly if you're going to use the report to attract or interest investors or funders. One of the questions they will ask is how valid, how trustworthy is this information that you are offering them. And if you can support the information with documents such as policy documents, Excel spreadsheets, training documents, email, employee email newsletters, then that helps you explain how you have rated each factor. So though the system doesn't require you to put the supporting documentation in, but if you do so, I think it would help validate the information you're giving. Then you press save and you go on to the next factor. So far what I've been talking about is free of charge, and the next stage is fee-based. And here, should you wish to do so, the system would consolidate your ratings. It would visualize them in form of a radar chart, which I've shown you early on in the presentation. It separates out the ratings which are identify likely strengths and the ratings that identify likely opportunities for improvement. It calculates your workforce financial ratios. It compares your factor scores with the benchmarks, and should you wish to do so, it provides you with a very simple approach to creating and updating your human capital strategy. So let's assume that you've paid your fee. What you'll be presented with is something along these lines. It'll be slightly different because I'm just changing the structure of this particular page, but it'll give you the chance to have a look at your radar report separately and then download the full report. And also it allows you to download the proposed structure of your human capital strategy. So let's have a look at the report itself. Once you've downloaded the content, you have a sequence of events. Obviously, I think it would be worthwhile just confirming what the system says are your likely strengths and opportunities, and make sure they feel right based on the debate and discussions you've had, the debate and rate. Download the strategy checklist should you wish to do so, but the main thing at this stage, I think, is first of all to say what is it we need to do to improve the way we are managing our people and who should do what. So the report itself, one section just simply consolidates your ratings, and here is an example of workforce integration as the example factor, and you can see here the relevance scores are between 4 and 5 and the rating scores are between 2 and 4. The score is basically the multiplication of one and the other, so 3 4s are 12, etc. And the system then says, okay, now if you rate yourselves the descriptor as 4 or 5, and you rate your deployment as 4 and 5, that is considered to be a strength, or defined as a strength. If you rate yourself 4 or 5, sorry, rate the importance or relevance of the descriptor as 4 or 5, but you rate yourselves as below 3, then that is considered to be an opportunity for improvement. The system also averages your scores, and that average is what is used to compare your factor scores with the benchmarks. Then, as I say, the system separates out your strengths and then also separates out your opportunities for improvement. It's at this stage, I think, this is where you need to say, does this feel right? Does it feel, do our debates and discussions, our ratings, they've come out with this sort of information, does it feel right? And it's basically the feeling that you have as to whether you need to consider it to be a strength or an opportunity for improvement. You will have to have input your data here, because otherwise the system doesn't work. So these are the ratios which what I found are particularly important in terms of what investors look for. These are almost the first things they look for when they are assessing your organization. And the benchmark analysis, for each factor there's the score you've created, the comparison score I mentioned before, and then the difference. Now, once again, it's a judgment call as to whether that difference really does mean anything to you. If it's something which you say, oh my goodness, we've got this as an opportunity and I think we need to do something about it, then this difference probably helps an awful lot. But don't assume just because there's a difference that you have to do something about it. It's a judgment call. Now, in terms of setting objectives, you can use your own objective setting system, obviously, but the Human Capital Strategy Sheet lists the 12 factors. It allows you to create the importance of the factor now, decide on what actions should be taken and then who should be responsible for doing what. There was quite a lot during the development of the approach. There's quite a lot of questions asked, and what I've tried to do is to gather them up as part of the FAQs. And as you can see, there's a series of FAQs which you can look at when you have the time and the interest. So that's as much as I need to talk about at this stage. If you need to contact me, then you can do so via LinkedIn or through my direct email. And just one last thing before I go. This is the range of further reading I mentioned as I went through the slides. So all remains now is for me to say good luck with developing your report. Goodbye.